So they want to sort of subvert the very bodies that have been created to keep the gains of the civil rights movement in place and use them, in fact, to their ends, which is it's not just demolishing them, but in fact turning them around.
Welcome to Assembly Required with Stacey Abrams from Crooked Media. I'm your host, Stacey Abrams. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to talk about choices. People organize themselves into societies, and those societies choose various ways to make decisions. In America, we opted for a form of democracy, the ability to choose the leaders who decide for us, or sometimes to directly voice our opinions about how stuff happens. Yet, despite 249 years of grueling practice, the right to vote remains under constant attack. One of the most pernicious attacks is known as voter suppression. That's when they create obstacles to a citizen's ability to register, cast a ballot, or have that ballot counted. This battle for the soul of our democracy is so important to me that in 2018, I founded Fair Fight, an organization dedicated to combating voter suppression and protecting voting rights. I launched Fair Fight in part as a response to voting irregularities that impacted my own campaign for governor of Georgia. But its mission is not about the outcome of any single election. Look, no one has the right to win an election, but every eligible American should have the right to vote and have that vote count. With that simple mission, Fair Fight has worked to stop the steady, methodical, cynical, right-wing assaults on the bedrock of our shared values. We work in communities, on campuses, and when necessary, we take our work to the courts. Well, this month, Fair Fight went back to court to challenge an insidious effort to intimidate Georgia voters, particularly Black, brown, or first-time voters. Their goal? Well, to prevent them from casting a ballot. And why does it matter? Because Georgia has become the GOP lab for experiments in voter suppression. What happens here definitely doesn't stay here. And here's what happened. Ahead of the January 2021 Senate runoff, a Texas-based right-wing organization called True the Vote orchestrated the largest known mass voter eligibility challenge in Georgia's history. How'd they do it? Well, True the Vote provided volunteers with lists of voters from the U.S. Postal Service's National Change of Address database, folks they flagged as ineligible to vote. Now, if you've ever changed apartments, you know how the system works. These anti-voter advocates use this database as evidence of ineligibility, even though the database can be outdated. And despite the fact that people who file to change their address can still be properly registered to vote. True the Vote used this sleazy, shady practice to file more than 250,000 formal challenges in 2021. Voters received notifications questioning their right to vote based on a convenient system designed to forward their mail. Imagine trying to cast a ballot and being pulled out of line because your right to vote has been challenged, or seeing your name posted publicly online with the accusation that you are ineligible to vote. And just in case the humiliation didn't do the trick, True the Vote also announced it was recruiting former Navy SEALs to monitor polling places, and they even offered a $1 million bounty for reports of voter fraud. Now, luckily, most of the accusations were dismissed by local officials here in Georgia, but the damage was done. The sheer scale of these baseless challenges disrupted local elections, burdened underfunded officials, created rampant confusion, and intimidated voters who had done nothing wrong. Then, in March of 2021, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, a man who built his political career on being one of the nation's most effective architects of voter suppression, well, he opened the floodgates by signing SB 202 into law. SB 202 allows unlimited voter challenges, which means that any person's voter registration can be challenged as ineligible by anyone at any time. Look, voter suppression isn't new to America, or sadly to Georgia. Both parties have treated those they considered undesirable voters as somehow criminal for exercising this fundamental constitutional right. Both parties have abused their power to block access to the polls or scare voters away at the moment their power is the greatest. But right now, in this century, voter suppression is the strategy of choice for Republicans. Brian Kemp and Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis and True the Vote are the ideological descendants of those who have long opposed voting rights for all citizens, regardless of race or gender. And across the country, and now in the halls of Congress, Republicans are passing laws designed to make it harder for people to vote precisely because they know that an engaged citizenry threatens their power. They know that democracy must deliver for its people, and that the list of obligations is made with the casting of that ballot and the accountability that follows. In the fight against tyranny and autocracy, we cannot forget the basics: the ability to choose our leaders and pick our positions, to vote our values. I am proud that Fair Fight has returned to federal court, this time to oppose coordinated mass voter challenges and end the ability of bad, cowardly actors to use this tactic to intimidate and overwhelm voters. And while Fair Fight awaits a decision on the case, there are going to be those who point out that we may not win, so why bother? Well, I'm here to remind us of the obligation to fight anyway, because fairness demands it. And now on to the subject of today's episode. In the lead up to last year's presidential election, warnings about Project 2025 were everywhere. On TikTok, during political rallies, and in the news. Voices across the political and ideological spectrum sounded the alarm about a radical, detailed, and sweeping 900-plus page blueprint for implementation during Donald Trump's second term. This map of mayhem promised to remake the United States into a Christian nationalist nation, ruled by a theocracy and suborned by billionaires and tech moguls who could pick their deity. Fully implemented, Project 2025 will strip Americans of their bodily autonomy, endanger and dehumanize immigrants, erase history and DEI, and take a sledgehammer to the government programs we rely on, thereby plunging Americans into a complicit stupor. In fact, at the BET Awards, Taraji P. Henson even paused her monologue to deliver a stark warning. Quote, "Pay attention. It's not a secret. Look it up." And again, quote, "The Project 2025 plan is not a game. Look it up." Just 4 months into Trump's second term, Republicans have already delivered on too many of Project 2025's promises. But what we've seen is only the beginning. As we grapple with what they've already broken, we have to get ready for what's next on the agenda. And more importantly, we have to know so we can stop their march to destroy America. To understand what's to come and how we prepare, this week's guest is a Project 2025 expert, Atlantic staff writer David A. Graham. His new book, The Project: How Project 2025 is Reshaping America, is available wherever books are sold. David Graham, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so in grad school, during the 1996 presidential campaign, I first read the Mandate for Leadership. It was this quadrennial manifesto that was published by the Heritage Foundation that one of my professors recommended I read. I was getting my master's in public policy, so it seemed like maybe I should listen. And I read it. I was a little terrified, but it was like, okay, interesting. Well, fast forward to 2025, and a lot of people have probably heard the name Project 2025, and they know that it has had incredibly harmful consequences. But they may not be clear on its origin story and what it actually involves. So based on what I just told you about 1996, can you tell folks about how the Mandate for Leadership is connected to Project 2025? Can you describe its origins, its authors, and what it's trying to get done?
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank, sort of social conservative think tank that dates back to the early 70s. And they were pretty small throughout the 70s. And then in the lead up to the 1980 election, they produced this document called Mandate for Leadership. And the idea was to sort of provide a blueprint for the Reagan administration that would be not what they thought of as the same old republicanism. They were sick of the Gerald Ford, Richard Nixon, sort of what they saw as moderation. And so they put together this very detailed document, and it became really influential for the Reagan administration. By Heritage's count, the Reagan administration did 60% of the things in there in the first year alone. And it kind of made Heritage's name and made them a player in right-wing circles in Washington. So fast forward to the present day, or to 2022, actually. And they put out these reports basically every 4 years. Not every cycle, but most cycles since then. But Heritage wasn't quite the same force as it had been. And the think tank decided they wanted to sort of get back in the game. And so they gathered a bunch of right-wing thinkers, including a bunch of alums of the first Trump administration, to put together a plan for the next conservative president, whether that was Trump or somebody else, so they could be ready on day one with both a bunch of policies and then also a lot of ways to achieve them and the personnel they needed to make those things happen.
So when you think about the core mission of Project 2025, what are the 4 core goals, and how notably have they started implementation in this first 4 months?
Yeah, they lay out 4 goals, and one of them is to restore the family as the center of American life. One is to dismantle the administrative state, so basically to take on the civil service. One is to restore or to protect America's bounty and borders and money, they say. And then the fourth one is to restore the blessings of liberty. So as you can tell, those are both a little bit vague and also kind of couched in their kind of jargon. I think I see it as kind of a 2-step process. The first thing is they want to take over the executive branch. They want to seize a ton of power for the president that the president hasn't historically had. And they want to take power from Congress in particular. And they want to do all these things then to implement this vision of society they have. And that's when they talk about putting the family at the center. They have this very traditional conception of families with men who are breadwinners and women who are at home, children who fit gender norms. And they want this biblically based idea of the family to be how America operates. And so that's what they're aiming for.
What made you take on the analysis and this deep dive into Project 2025 as your mission?
When I first read it, I guess I first encountered it in 2023 and then started reading it in 2024 during the campaign. And I actually didn't read it cover to cover then. And, these documents, as you were saying, they're around and I sort of think of them as a common thing. And they're like basically wish lists. Some of those things are going to happen, but a lot of them aren't. And so I didn't take it all that seriously. I read the bits and pieces that applied to particular policy areas that I was thinking about. And it was only after the election I read it cover to cover. And that's when I started to grasp what a complete program it was and how integrated it was and how they had something different in the sort of methods they were laying out. And that made me think that it was something that maybe other people hadn't understood either, and that they needed to grasp to sort of see where things are going and maybe get a little bit of mooring in the crazy first few months of the Trump administration.
Assembly Required with Stacey Abrams is brought to you by bookshop.org. Finding the right words can be hard, but bookshop.org has you covered. From poetry that speaks to your soul, to a horror novel that distracts you from your bad day, or an autobiography that reveals another side of someone you thought you knew, reading is one sure way to change your day and your outlook. Our current recommended read at Assembly Required is The Dictator's Learning Curve by William J. Dobson, which helps us understand how others around the world have met the challenges to democracy, and we can too. When you purchase from bookshop.org, you're supporting more than 2,000 local independent bookstores across the country, ensuring they will continue to enrich their communities for generations to come. And big news for those of you with an e-reader. Bookshop.org has launched an ebook app. You can now support local independent bookstores even when you read digitally. Use code STACEY to get 10% off your next order at bookshop.org. That's code STACEY, STACEY, at bookshop.org. Assembly Required with Stacey Abrams is brought to you by OneSkin. I use OneSkin's OS1 face and eye care regimen, especially at night, because it can help remove the day's makeup in a few easy steps. I like that it keeps my skin hydrated and feeling fresh, and that I don't need a complicated routine to take care of my skin. A few pumps of cleanser, dots of moisturizer, and a pat or two of eye cream is all I need. Free from over 1,500 chemicals and preservatives that can make skin red, irritated, or itchy, their products are certified safe for sensitive skin, dermatologist tested, and approved by independent testing platforms like Skin Safe. Founded and led by an all-woman team of skin longevity scientists, OneSkin's products are backed by extensive lab and clinical data to validate their efficacy and safety on all skin types. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code ASSEMBLY at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code ASSEMBLY. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Give your skin the scientifically proven, gentle care it deserves with OneSkin. So, we've seen the outcome of the, slash and burn, the takeover of small agencies, the physical occupation of certain agencies in this country. We've seen how this document has been a blueprint. Can you talk about the ways that, sometimes have been found to be, if not illegal, then legally questionable? Can you talk about the ways that Project 2025 itself has been able to leverage legal methods to reshape how we understand America?
Yeah, I think they're really clever about this. And it's, the people who wrote this document are folks who've spent a lot of time in government and have thought a lot about it and sort of how to attack it from the inside. So, they have this sense of how to use the laws and how to attack what's there. I think a great example of this is the attack on independent agencies, things like the FCC, the FCT, the FEC. And these are all, they're established with leaders who are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. And they're established to sort of operate independently, although within the executive branch. And that goes back to 1935, when Franklin Roosevelt attempted to fire leaders of these agencies, or of the FTC in that case. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. These are independent. And what they want to do is get the Supreme Court to overturn that. And so they're trying to get basically a test case there. The same thing with impoundment. They want to keep, they believe that Congress can set a ceiling for what the president spends, but that the president doesn't have to spend all of it. And they want to get a test case to Congress to overturn the 1974 law that prevents that. So there's a real sense they believe that the Constitution is on their side, even when the law isn't, and they're looking to challenge that everywhere they can.
Okay, I love the framing you just said. They believe the Constitution is on their side, even if the law isn't. Can you talk about how that reconciles with what we've long believed in as sort of small d democratic principles of America?
Yeah, I mean, they claim, and this is another example of sort of the interesting ways they approach this, and it's a little bit chilling. They think that what they're doing is more small d democratic. They look at this and they say, well, the president is elected. Why are there these bureaucrats in the executive branch who the president can't fire at will? Why can't the president fire the head of an independent agency? And I think it is an attack on checks and balances. I mean, the center of the democratic system in this country, as I understand it, is that there are checks and balances and that no one branch has unfettered power. It's not enough to simply say that they can be, a president can be turned out of office after 4 years. You need to have other branches that check them. And what they're doing is systematically taking this power away from Congress and to some extent away from the courts as well, and giving it to the president.
I mean, I served in the state legislature. I know people in Congress. And one issue that is baffling to me is that I've never known elected leaders to so aggressively concede their power to something else and to someone else. Can you talk about how Project 2025 and its progenitors, how they have helped engineer the sort of unilateral surrender of Congress to this worldview?
It's really remarkable. And they say that this is a plan for any Republican president or any conservative president. But it's just hard for me to imagine that any other Republican could have had the kind of success with it that Trump has, simply because no other president has managed to cow Congress as fully as Trump has. You've got these Republicans who are simply afraid to contradict him on anything. And it's interesting because one of the critiques they lay out in Project 2025 is that Congress, they think, has given up too much power. So they say, Congress hasn't passed a budget for years. It's giving up the power to declare war to the White House, all these things. But instead of saying, so how can we re-empower Congress? They say, great, how can we then empower the executive branch more? How can we grab more things for that? And, I maybe naively thought that Republicans in Congress would be a little bit more zealous in defending their own power. But instead, they have simply gone along with it all. And I think the one example that cuts against this is that it underscores just like how much power they have that they're refusing to use, which is in the first couple weeks of the administration, Russell Vought attempted to impound funds from Congress, blocked executive branch agencies from spending money. And just a small handful of Republican senators spoke up and said, hey, wait a second, that money is allocated to our states. You can't do that. And the White House promptly folded. So the moment they do speak up, they have a lot of power, but they're clearly afraid to do that. And I also think it serves a purpose for them where they want to cut spending, but they are afraid to take tough votes to do it. They want to cut social services, but they're afraid to take tough votes to do it. So they're happy to let Trump do the things that they would like to do, but just don't have the courage to do.
Dive into the magical world of Edwina's Bedtime Adventures by Ariel Williams. Join Edwina, the little hippo with a big imagination, as she drifts off to sleep and embarks on whimsical bedtime journeys. Whether she's saving the day as a brave firefighter, caring for patients as a nurse at Sunny Valley Hospital, or exploring the wonders of the jungle, Edwina's heartwarming tales will capture the imagination of young readers and spark endless bedtime giggles. This is an electronic book. You'll need an EPUB reader or PDF reader to enjoy this whimsical tale. Get your copy today at lulubooks.com or follow the link tree in profile to get your copy and let the adventure begin.
Gas Station Diaries by Adam King is a compelling collection of fictional stories drawn from the author's experiences working at a gas station during the tumultuous year of 2020. Set in the unassuming locale of Rainbow Land, the narrative unfolds in a place where time seems to stand still, yet unexpected drama and human encounters abound. This is an electronic book. You must upload an EPUB reader or a PDF reader to enjoy this book. Get your copy today at lulubooks.com and let the story unfold.
The Baker and the Handyman's Sweet Connection. In a quaint village nestled in a picturesque valley, there stood a small house in the shape of a mushroom. This whimsical home belonged to a young boy named Jamie, barely out of high school, who had a passion for baking. Inside, his cozy kitchen was always filled with the sweet aroma of cakes, cookies, and all sorts of delightful treats. What made his creation special was that each of his cakes was shaped like tiny mushrooms, a nod to his quirky home. Jamie's baking became the talk of the town. From birthdays to celebrations, everyone in the village adored his sweets.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
Sable's Song, A Siren's Journey to Joy. Once upon a time, in a small, worn-out town in Middle America, there lived a little child named Sable. Worn into poverty, Sable's body was frail, so thin that you could see her bones, but her heart was filled with an exuberance that not even hunger could dull. Sable was awkward, with dark, deep-set eyes that sparkled with innocence and wonder. Despite being born a boy, Sable always knew she was different. Inside her lived a girl, bright and effervescent, waiting to bloom.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
The Park of Secrets.
In the year 2060, near the heart of Florida, just a stone's throw from Disney World, stood a theme park unlike any other, a place known as the House of Secrets. It was a magical park, much like a state fair, filled with towering rides, carnival games, and parades that drew people from all over the world. But among the grand Ferris wheel and the colorful day parade, there was one attraction that outshined them all, the Parade Princess, a mesmerizing mermaid named Kenya. Kenya was a sight to behold. At 22 years old, fresh out of college, she had the kind of beauty that drew people to her like moths to a flame. Her brown skin glowed under the park lights, her hair a stunning mix of purple and pink that cascaded over her shoulders. Little pink hearts adorned her cheeks, and a ribbon of color stretched across her nose. But it wasn't just her beauty that made her special. Her eyes, big and almond-shaped, seemed to capture the hearts of everyone who saw.
Discover the magic of the Park of Secrets. Step into a world of wonder with the Park of Secrets, a heartwarming tale by Ariel Williams that will captivate your imagination. This enchanting story is now available exclusively on Lulu Books.
The Future, Daughters of Liberty, A New Dawn. In 2040, the United States was a fractured nation, still reeling from the fallout of Project 2025, the catastrophic policy that had allowed a resurgence of systemic oppression. The Deep South had seceded once more, forming the antebellum republic, where human trafficking, racial inequality, and gender oppression became tragically normalized. The Second Civil War erupted as the rest of the nation sought to free those trapped in this dystopian regime. After years of bloodshed, Kamala Harris had finally led the Union to victory, restoring a fragile sense of hope. But the battle scars ran deep, especially in places like Louisiana, where the remnants of a broken society still lingered.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
A Dying Planet, The Last Harvest.
In the year 2060, Earth is a shadow of its former self, choked by pollution, endless concrete, and abandoned by nature. Only a small fishing village by the sea has managed to preserve the planet's last untouched forest. In this dying world, June and Win, two young girls and the last children in their village, cling to the remnants of hope and innocence. Win roams the forest, collecting the season's last harvest, while June sings songs that echo with a haunting beauty through the village.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. And when did I tell you? A long time ago. And what did I say will happen when I told you? Exactly what just happened.